Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. When you start getting into all the different things that you could want or need as a prepper, it can get expensive really fast. We all like to talk about big generators or fancy survival food, but there's a whole lot of stuff out there that's really useful, but it's still cheap enough to stockpile. And when I say cheap, I don't mean that it was the same price that it was a few years ago, because inflation has messed with pretty much everything. But instead, I'm talking about preps that still cost around $20 or less. They could be things that you want to include in each of your survival kits so you have a few of them, or they could be items that you stack deep to help you deal with a longer term bug in at home. And we're going to start with the fun stuff first, and that's survival gear. Different kinds of fire starters are always good to have around since they can be used in a lot of different situations. You can use them to help you not die during a survival situation, or for just lighting a camp stove at home if you're bugging in. And what's nice about them is that most of them don't cost a whole lot. You can get a multi-pack of disposable lighters for around $5, and these longer grill-style lighters don't really cost a whole lot more. Ferro rods are also pretty inexpensive. A large one like this costs around 11 bucks, and you can get a 3-pack of smaller ones for around 12. Stormproof matches, while they do cost more than regular matches, are still pretty cheap. You can find a small kit like this that comes with some matches, a waterproof case, and a couple of strikers for less than $9. And since fire starters are useful in such a wide variety of circumstances, there really isn't a reason to not keep at least a few of them in each kit that you have, especially if you take advantage of deals that go along with these multi-packs. The next piece of cheap survival gear that you should stockpile is paracord, and this is one item that's remained pretty stable in price, even with inflation causing trouble for pretty much everything else. I've been able to find it locally and online for around $10 for 100-foot hanks consistently for the past few years. Paracord, of course, has a ton of uses. You can use it to build shelters, repair gear, make tools, and also as a clothesline. I even used it one time to make handles for an old filing cabinet at a place that I used to work. Then there's also a lot of water-related preps that you could pick up for under $20. I showed these water storage bags in my Altoids 10 survival kit video last week. Each one holds a liter of water and they're 4 mil thick. You can get a 3-pack for less than $6. While those should not be your main water container by any stretch of the imagination because they're plastic, they're nice since they take up almost no space and they allow you to collect additional water if you get the chance. Now, for a more long-term everyday use option, you can get a 27-ounce stainless steel clean canteen for around $20. These will blend in pretty much everywhere, so you can have it at work without anybody batting an eye. But since it's stainless steel, you can boil water directly inside of it. I like that one since it's skinny enough to fit on the side compartments of my EDC bag. Other steel bottles that I have are a little bit too fat to do that. If you're in an urban environment, a Silcock key would be the perfect thing to pair with a bottle like this, since it'll allow you to access water from spigots on the outside of commercial buildings, at parks, and even near gas station pumps. One like this will cost around $9 as of filming this, but if you want to scavenge water from one of those sources, you may need to let the water run for a little bit before filling up your container. Spigots like those can go a long time in between uses and you may need to let some crud wash out. Then if you know that there's a boil water notice in your area, or you know that your water utilities have become compromised, you are going to need to treat any water that you collect. While most water filters, including Sawyer's, are above $20 at the moment, I was still able to find live straws for just under that. Given these are not my favorite water filters since you have to use them as a straw. You don't have the option to use a bag like you would with a Sawyer, and they don't remove viruses or chemicals like a Grail would, but they're a whole lot better than nothing, and at $20 a pop, most people can afford to have at least a few of these on hand. Water treatment tablets are another option, and they cost around $9. But the thing about these is once you run out of them, you're going to have to figure something else out. So I'm not the biggest fan of these. Then you also have some cheap options when it comes to home water storage. Aquatainers have been my go-to water storage container for several years now. I've been able to find them locally and online for under $20. And another thing that makes them cost effective is that they include a spigot, where with other containers like water bricks, that's something that you're gonna have to purchase separately. Aquatainers hold 7 gallons of water, and they can be placed on the edge of a sink, which makes them easy to use for things like hand washing, brushing your teeth, rinsing other things off, things like that. You can also get decent collapsible water containers for not a whole lot of money. Like with the water bags, you aren't going to keep water in those all the time, but they're very useful if you don't have a lot of space and you want the ability to collect additional water if you know that something bad is coming your way, or during the opening stages of disaster where you still have at least some water coming through the tap. For knives, Moras are an excellent inexpensive option. The Companion, which is what I have here, is probably the one that comes to most people's minds when they think of these. You can get them both in stainless and carbon steel, and at around $20 each. They're probably the best thing that you can get if you have multiple kits that you need to equip. The Craftline Basic is a little less refined, but it's still a good deal at around $10. Now, when it comes to cooking, alcohol stoves are a good inexpensive option that it doesn't hurt to have multiple of. I bought this one that I use as my primary cooking method in my bug out bag, and then I have a couple of others that I made myself. I made my first one during the 2021 Texas ice storm when I was afraid that we would lose power and I'd burn through the small amount of propane that I had on hand. And you can also stockpile fuel for these pretty cheap. Even a large gallon can like this one costs just over $20, and it should last you for quite a while. Then there's also some survival odds and ends that you can stockpile that cost less than 20 bucks. Metal wire can be used for making repairs and creating snares and trip lines. And then Mylar blankets also don't cost a whole lot of money. You can get a multi-pack of cheapies like this one for around $7, or you can get a better, more heavy-duty one by itself for around $15 or $16. Mosquito nets are another thing that you may want to have a few of, and those are pretty cheap as well. You could get small ones for covering your face and also larger ones for covering your sleeping area. And that's really important during the spring and summer months, especially if you live somewhere like I do that has a ton of those stupid, horrible little monsters. Right in the rain pads are also good to keep in all of your kits, and they cost under $20 as well. Then when it comes to medical supplies, I really like these wound care kits that you can get at Walmart. They include different size gauze pads, gauze roll, and tape to hold things in place. And when it comes to medical supplies, a lot of times we overlook these items that can be used for treating those larger wounds. The next group of cheap items that preppers should stockpile are different kinds of energy preps. While larger things like generators are pretty expensive, there are plenty of smaller items that won't require you to sell a kidney, and one of those is fuel. While the cost of these has gone up significantly over the past few years, you can still find 1-pound propane bottles for around $5 or $6 each. Then, while the cost of tanks has gone up, if you already have like 20-pound or larger cylinders, you can usually top those off for under $20, at least where I live. A 20-pounder will hold just over 4.5 gallons, and propane here costs around $3.29 a gallon. So filling one all the way up should be around 15 or 20 bucks. So if you invest in some tanks and adapter hoses, you can bypass the 1-pounders for the most part, which will save you a lot of money in the long run. Another inexpensive fuel that preppers can stockpile is butane. I really like butane for cooking indoors, and its price is one of the few things that's actually remained stable where I live. While 1-pound propane bottles have increased $1 or $2 in price, I can still pick up an 8.8 ounce can of butane like this for around $3. Then, if you have oil lamps, you can also find fuel for those for under $20, but that's going to depend on the kind of fuel that you're trying to pick up and, of course, how much. In general, lamp oil like this is a little more expensive than kerosene or clean heat. You can also get long rolls of wick material for your lamps, and those usually cost under $10 per roll. If you're storing gasoline, you can get some fuel stabilizer. Now, there have been slap fights on the internet as to whether or not those actually work. I don't personally use them, but a lot of people do. My strategy is just I pick up ethanol free, which stores better since it doesn't bond with moisture in the air like fuel with ethanol in it. Then I rotate through it, and really I don't store that much gas anyway. My gas generator can also run on propane, so there's really not much of a need to. You can also stockpile batteries, and many of them cost under 20 bucks. Traditional AA's, AAA's, and D cells can all be picked up in that price range, but my preference is to go for rechargeable variants. Given if you get a starter kit that comes with batteries and a charger, that's going to cost you a little more, but if you already have those things, you can pick up additional batteries or individual chargers to add to your collection. And when you're picking up batteries, don't forget 9 volts. These are commonly used in smoke alarms and can also be used with steel wool as an emergency fire starter. I also have a couple of these USB battery banks by Anchor. These aren't their newest or their largest options, but they work really well, and the last time I checked, they only cost around $16. The next group of items that you can stockpile for not a whole lot of money is power outage basics. This is an LED lantern that I picked up recently that can run on either AA's or D cells. It can produce up to 500 lumens, which makes it a good choice if you need to light up a larger area like a bedroom during a power outage. If you have a solar generator, then you can also pick up some string lights like these. They use very little electricity, and since there's several of them on a strand, they can produce a decent amount of light. LED lights in general are going to be perfect for summer power outages since they don't produce a whole lot of heat while they're in use. Because the last thing that you want to do is have your lighting method further heat up your home when you're already miserable. Another inexpensive thing it wouldn't hurt to have a few of during a summer power outage is battery-operated fans. This one here can either be set on a tabletop or floor, but it can also be suspended above your head and then used as a miniature ceiling fan. This feature was added so that you could use it in a tent, but you can also use it in your home if you install a hook in your ceiling and attach a paracord to it. Now, I would recommend screwing the hook into a wall anchor rather than just the ceiling itself, because you don't want to wake up with a face full of fan in the middle of the night. That probably wouldn't be fun. Now, battery-operated fans like these will always be limited in the amount of air circulation that they can give you, but they're a whole lot better than nothing, and they do get more effective the closer that you can get them to you. Another good group of dirt cheap items preppers should stockpile are repair and maintenance supplies. Things like zip ties and duct tape are obvious, but don't overlook other things like super glue and epoxy. Super glue can be used to repair things like shoes that may be difficult to fix with things like zip ties, and it'll hold up a lot better over time than duct tape will. Epoxies can be used to create strong bonds on all sorts of surfaces, including metal. And then for gear repair, I really like small sewing kits like this one. They only cost a few dollars, but they have most of what you need to make repairs to bags, clothing, and other kinds of gear. You can make them even more useful by adding things like a canvas sail needle and some heavier duty thread to them. The next group of cheap items that preppers should stockpile are hygiene items. I talked about a lot of these in a previous video that I did over this topic, but one thing that I didn't mention was compressed towels. When stored, each one of those is about the same size as a large antacid tablet, just a little bit thicker. But when you add water to them, they expand into a towel that you can use for various cleaning tasks, including wiping your butt. Then there's also different kinds of pesticides. I like to have a good mix of options for keeping bugs off of me and then also out of my house. You can get a spray bottle of permethrin that you can use to treat clothing for around 18 bucks, and you can get other sprays for a whole lot cheaper than that. Just be sure to keep permethrin away from your cats since it's very toxic to them. This Ortho Home Defense has done a decent job around the perimeter of my home, but my advice is to skip the ones that come with a sprayer and just pick up the refills and a separate garden sprayer. The sprayers that come with those are fairly horrible, so a garden sprayer is just going to be easier to use, it's going to last longer, and the smaller ones like 1 gallon models are pretty cheap. The next inexpensive item that preppers should stockpile is books. Many of the best books over prepping and survival, including Prepper's Long-Term Survival Guide, How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It, and How to Build the Perfect Bug Out Bag, all cost under $20. You can use books like that now to help you become a more well-rounded prepper, since many times books are going to be able to go over certain topics in greater detail than what we could do in a YouTube video, or at least a YouTube video people would watch. You can also pick up references like the SAS Survival Handbook and the Encyclopedia of Country Living for under $20 as well. Those are useful to have now, but they could be absolutely indispensable during a disaster. And the same is true for books that detail edible and medicinal plants that grow in your area. That'd be very good to have during certain situations. Then there's also some everyday items that you could repurpose for survival uses that many people just throw away. Last week I showed how to make different kinds of survival kits out of Altoids tins. You can also use cardboard, a metal can, and an old candle to create a buddy burner that you could use to cook food or boil water. So if you want to learn more about how to repurpose everyday items for survival, then be sure to check out my Best Prepper Hacks video by clicking here. Or if you want to see more dirt cheap items that preppers should be stockpiling that I didn't cover in this one, then click here. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.